Story 1. Feeling like you are not enough. Also, betrayal, being forgotten, knowing that you are being lied to. Story 2. Nausea is horrible. Also, needing to have a bowel movement without a bathroom nearby within a few minutes is distressing. Story 3. The gut-wrenching, bottomless pit of despair that you feel when your brother decides it is time to exit life. Never have I screamed as long or as hard as I did when receiving that news, and never have I felt more pain. It is almost impossible to describe. Story 4. That wave of sadness that hits you in the middle of the day, hunches your back, drops your shoulders, takes the step out of your walk, and pulls your aura inward, making you invisible. It is painfully addictive. With the right music, it is the greatest feeling ever. But then, that is heroin, isn't it? Story 5. Realizing mid-sentence that no one in the room is listening to you, so you just stop. It is not the worst, but it is pretty painful anyway. On the flip side, that one person in the group who noticed and said, "Wait, you did not finish your story. What happened next?" Story 6. Borderline personality disorders experience of any negative emotion. Story 7. Crippling loneliness along with depression make it difficult to get through each day. You can only find ways to cope. Story 8. I have experienced sleep paralysis a few times, and it is quite horrible. You try with every ounce of strength to move and roll over, but you just cannot. I can only imagine that this might be similar to what a person with paralysis must feel every single day. Story 9. When you think you have lost your child or something is wrong with them. Story 10. Vertigo. I will gladly take physical pain over vertigo or dizziness any day. Story 11. Feeling like you are not enough, that everyone around you is better and more likable, and that you will never fit in or be a part of something. I had a toxic friendship with someone for years, and this was all I got out of it. Story 12. Having to make the choice to euthanize an animal companion you have had for a long time. Rest in peace, killer. You were the best girl for 19 years. Story 13. The morning after a tragedy, you wake up slowly. At first, all you register is that you are warm and pleasantly sleepy. The world is still a good place. Then you remember the previous day, your stomach drops, and you lose your breath. That abrupt shift from contentment to abject horror is the worst feeling in the world. Story 14. Knowing that someone is hurting you, yet you cannot do anything but wait for it to end. The feeling of helplessness and vulnerability haunts you even after it is over. Story 15. Being in tremendous debt, so bad that you wake up in the morning and your first thought upon realizing who you are is that you are in terrible debt. Story 16. Being alone for 20 years, missing all the best years of your life, and feeling there is no escape possible is very sad. I am still relatively young, 31, but it is just so sad. It did not need to be like this at all. I moved schools and people were just different and I could never fit in. Story 17. Deep itch, as I would call it. I do not know if there is a medical term for it. I had it once after a sunburn, and my niece experienced it after knee surgery. It is basically an itching sensation, 10 times the intensity, inside of you where you cannot reach it. The sensation feels like it might break your brain. It is definitely my worst sensation, and I have had my jawbone sawed without anesthesia. Story 18. Knowing you are not the person your mother loves the most. Story 19. I don't have children, but I'm pretty sure it's losing a child. Story 20. Anhedonia. Not being able to feel any sense of joy or excitement truly is the worst. Story 21. When someone tells you they will take their own life and you drive to them, not knowing what you will find when you arrive. Story 22. Betrayal by someone you trusted and cared for is very painful. Story 23. I have had one feeling that hit me more when I drank all the time, which I can only describe as acute, agonizing, almost colicky yet simultaneously empty despair. It was like doom was at my doorstep. Words cannot do it justice, so there is not much I can say to describe it. I guess think of it like all of the excitement you have as a child on Christmas morning, but instead of excitement, it is unfathomable dread and a desire to do anything to make the feeling stop. Like a horror movie's culmination, but you know you are not the main character and have no plot armor. Story 24. When my 21-year-old cat died while I was holding her, that night was the worst night of my life. Giving her body to be cremated, knowing I would never pet her again or kiss her on her fluffy head, was heartbreaking. I can barely type this without crying. I am at work with tears in my eyes right now. Story 25. Rejection is difficult. It is not limited to romance. Job searching can be challenging as well. Story 26. Lack of sleep, such as almost 48 hours without rest, feels bad. It is like being on autopilot with no regard for anything, just feeling empty. I do not want to go through that again. Story 27. Loss of trust coincides with the heartbreak and loss of trust in the person your heart loves the most. Story 28. Because I was raised by older parents and have seen it firsthand, I realize that one day after I die, the world that I used to know will die. Every single person who lived a while ago went through the same experience. This change also happens very gradually and slowly throughout everyone's lifetime, and nothing is immune to it. Story 29. Mourning. That feeling that invades your mind and body when you remember the name of someone you love who died before you. If anyone has ever experienced tear gas, it is the most similar thing I can think of. An instant and intense, debilitating state of perception. Everything in that moment seems hopeless and full of horror and hurt, as if it will never end. Then, a few minutes later, you compose yourself and continue until next time. The only difference is tear gas is not actually all that dangerous in its most common application on healthy people. On the other hand, remembering your fallen friends and family can lead to intense bouts of anxiety and depression, which have both been known to result in suicide from time to time. To everyone who feels like this is them, my condolences. In my experience, the pain never gets smaller, your tolerance to it grows. In practice, it will get better as long as you do not have an existential crisis about mortality. Story 30. Seeing your crush online but not replying to the message you sent them. Story 31. Grief, loss, heartache. That aside, severe constipation. Story 32. When you have been struggling with a difficult bowel movement, and after 20 minutes of pushing and making progress, you run out of strength and rest for a moment, only to feel the bowel movement receding back into you, undoing all of your progress. Story 33. Having a post-operative drainage tube removed from your stomach after recovering is not painful but causes a very uneasy feeling. Story 34. Engaging in an intimate relationship with someone who no longer has affection for you. Story 35. Picking up something sticky, such as honey or jam, and washing your hands but still feeling sticky. Also, the mushy, slippery sensation when you realize you have stepped in dog waste. Story 36. When your wife receives a stage 4 cancer diagnosis, and all you can do is take her to treatments and watch her slowly fade away. Story 37. Wanting to be something you are not for someone you love. Story 38. Suddenly, you are told that you are losing a childhood beloved pet, and you have to make the decision to end their pain, which is best for them but not for you. Story 39. Fear and panic attacks legitimately feel like you are dying. Story 40. I believe heartbreak has taken years off my life. It happened when members of my family who had said they loved me started deliberately making me feel totally unloved. I hope these gaslighting, passive-aggressive people get back everything they dished out to me. Story 41. Feeling depression creeping back in. Knowing your sparkle is fading a bit. Story 42. I am on a heavy serotonin norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor, and when I forget to take my medication, it causes brain zaps. They are not painful, but they are very uncomfortable and hard to describe. It feels like little bolts of electricity randomly running throughout the brain. It also makes me feel dissociated from my body, and overall, I become very sick. I learned the hard way not to miss my medication. Story 43. Someone said heartbreak, and I think that is it, but doing the dishes is a close second. Story 44. Akathisia can be a medication side effect. Before I knew the name, I described it as butterflies in my stomach. It feels like a horrible crawling sensation, and you have to move around endlessly and wiggle, or else you feel like you will explode. It is possibly similar to restless leg syndrome, but I experienced it in my stomach as a side effect of certain medications. Long-term sufferers are known to be driven to suicide. Story 45. The loss of a parent or friend to whom one is emotionally close. Story 46. The girl I like did not know I was in her class until 3 weeks in and said sadly, "Oh, he is here." Story 47. Heartbreak is one of the worst feelings that is not physically painful. That and unrequited longing. Story 48. Probably also the feeling when you forget where something is, like a phone or your wallet, to be honest. Story 49. That thing you do not want to think about, but you can feel it lurking just below your surface thoughts. You know the one. Story 50. Yes, panic. You cannot solve any situation. It is basically worthless, I think. Story 51. Realizing you made a serious mistake and there is no way to fix it. Story 52. Stepping on your dog's tail accidentally, and then they look up at you, hurt and offended. Story 53. Gut punch of betrayal torpedoed with vicious intensity as an ambush attack. Story 54. To work on something for hours and suddenly lose all of your work because your computer crashed. Story 55. The feeling I had after my psychotic break ended and the reality of everything started to sink in. Story 56. Loving someone for years, only to find out they have been betraying you and using you for money and amusement. Story 57. The moment you realize you misplaced something important in public, such as your phone, wallet, or keys. Story 58. Going through your significant other's phone makes your heart drop and causes you to start shaking. Story 59. Waiting to discover something, especially if there is a significant chance the outcome will be negative. Story 60. Knowing you made a mistake and there is no way to undo it. Story 61. Ignoring your intuition only to discover it was correct all along. Story 62. Having your own mother taken in handcuffs under an involuntary psychiatric hold to a psychiatric facility. Story 63. The feeling after breaking up with borderline personality disorder, knowing the damage you caused. Story 64. Seeing someone you once considered your loyal companion speak negatively about you. Story 65. Unrequited love hurts deeply, and the pain is indescribable. Loving someone and wanting to be with them while they see nothing in you is very painful. Story 66. Abandonment. People you trusted turning against you, or being left out, thinking you were close to someone, but realizing it was one-sided. It is like heartbreak with battery acid on top. Story 67. The feeling that your loved ones, such as your family, do not support your ideas and that you will never be enough for them. Story 68. When you were a child and your father was going to be home from work soon, and you made a serious mistake at school, and your mother was going to tell him when he walked in the door. Story 69. Grief comes first. Disappointment is second, specifically the feeling of being let down by a person you trusted. It is especially painful if they have broken your trust before and you decided to give them another chance, only for them to disappoint you again. Story 70. Feeling certain that my husband will not openly accept our sons if they have any lifestyle choice outside of what he considers normal. His views have been extreme since the Trump administration. I never would have married him if I had known he would be this way. Our boys were ring bearers in a wedding for our niece and her wife, on his side, with no issues before the political changes. Politics have changed a lot. My youngest, almost 3, is obsessed with Frozen. My husband is ready to have a coronary. He's 2.5 years old. He loves the music, storyline, and magic. He has no idea what is gender appropriate. I will absolutely divorce and pursue full custody if I ever question the emotional health of my children. I am watching everything very carefully. They matter more than anything. I honestly wonder how many marriages and relationships have suffered due to politics lately. Story 71. Anxiety, suicidal thoughts, and betrayal by your significant other. The last caused the first, which led to the second. Story 72. I do not know. I am sure a lot of people say heartbreak or similar feelings, but real heartbreak is physically painful. Story 73. I would say grief, but that is physically painful. So then helplessness. Story 74. Grew up in a cult and left after 40 years. It was essentially forbidden to make friends outside the cult, so I am very isolated. When I left the cult, I lost everyone. I have not spoken to longtime friends or any of my blood relatives for years. I have no one else because of it. I am as alone as anyone can be. My neighbor touched my shoulder while talking to me. I almost cried because of the human contact. This isolation was deliberately imposed on me for daring to question the leaders and the nature of existence. The pain I still can't understand, but it is not physical. Story 75. When your limb has been asleep and you have that strange tingling sensation, you try to move it and feel a strong, unusual sensation that almost takes your breath away. Nothing physically hurts during this time, but it feels awful. Story 76. Guilt. I know there are probably worse feelings, but as an overly empathetic person, I hate the feeling of guilt. It is the reason why I have let so many people walk all over me and why everything that I do is carefully thought out so that I know my actions will not negatively impact others. I would rather be the person being hurt than the person hurting others. I know it sounds like I am on my high horse writing this, but it is genuinely how I feel, and I honestly wish I were more selfish. Being this way is exhausting, and I am jealous of those who do not think like this. Story 77. Cognitive dissonance is the anguish of always knowing what you should do but not doing it, and the mental exhaustion of validating your actions. I am not even talking about major issues. I am highly sensitive to cognitive dissonance and have no major problems. It is the anguish of napping in the afternoon, not replying to a text, or making a return on Amazon. Therapy means I no longer turn this into self-hatred, but the anguish is always there. Story 78. Dread. Knowing in the pit of your stomach that something is wrong. Story 79. Being in a relationship with someone and loving them, but feeling alone. They don't know how to make you feel special or loved. It's like you're just there, and they work all the time but won't change jobs. I got divorced because of this. I was married for 8 years and had a wonderful daughter together. I couldn't be invisible. All he had to do was love me while he was home. I let him know exactly what I needed every 6 months for 2 years before I ended it. There is only so much loneliness one can take while not being alone, if that makes sense. To me, it's worse than being by yourself, which I am completely okay with. But don't be with someone and not truly be with them. It's the worst heartbreak. That marriage could have lasted forever if he had just worked at it. Story 80. Knowing you are the last choice and your friends never preferred you, do not allow it. People like these are not your friends. Story 81. Guilt, specifically the guilt for which you can do nothing now, is going to be with you always. How you shouldn't have done one thing, and now you cannot do anything about it. Story 82. Coping with a cancer diagnosis and the toll it takes on your body, both physically and mentally. Story 83. After going against your morals by saying you would never manipulate a situation like your narcissistic mother, but ending up doing it right back to her, then feeling disgusted with yourself for becoming her. Unlike her, you feel endless amounts of bottomless shame. Story 84. Being manipulated by someone you helped for a year made you believe you were in the wrong instead of them apologizing and owning up to their mistake. Story 85. 1. Heartbreak. 2. Friend group exclusion. 3. Acting like a jerk for no good reason and knowing you are unpleasant. 4. You cheated, stole, or acted badly and you are on the cusp of getting caught, causing intense anxiety. Story 86. Being rejected by the person you love most in the world is painful. As others have said, it feels like grief. Story 87. Boredom is really horrible. It is not one of the usual suspects, but being bored is so terrible that I would rather be physically hurt than feel bored. Story 88. Akathisia. Nothing on this list comes close to it. Imagine your brain is on fire and compelling you to move your body so you walk until your feet bleed. Then you are exhausted and want to sleep but cannot because your brain is compelling you to move. Add in a feeling of ants under your skin and utter terror, and you have hell on earth. It is not painful, but people with chronic akathisia are 6 times more likely to kill themselves than people with clinical depression. Story 89. Grief and heartbreak, especially when the person is literally everything to you. Story 90. Fear. Trust me, I am Ukrainian from Mariupol. I was under aerial bombing for a few weeks. Once you feel such fear, it never leaves. It stays in my bones, and I do not know if I will ever be fine again. Story 91. Watching a parent die from cancer and knowing there is nothing you can do to help. All you can do is watch them die. Story 92. Also, that punch in the gut when someone suddenly displays real anger at you without warning stays with you for a while. Story 93. Honestly, give some credit to the feeling of suffering emotional abuse from your narcissistic partner whom you used to love deeply, only to realize that all her love and affection was a lie used to manipulate you for her own validation, and that she never felt a single thing for you. That really sucks, man. Story 94. For me, losing a pet is similar to losing my boyfriend. Story 95. Losing your beloved pet is very difficult. In your heart, you know you will outlive them, but it is still a painful experience. Story 96. Grief can be physically painful and cause heartbreak. Can genuinely feel like your heart has shattered. Anxiety. All day long, anxiety can also cause physical pain. Story 97. To be honest, probably feeling left out or not being heard. It is difficult when you are trying to connect but cannot seem to get through. Story 98. Connecting with a person online, being friends for years, then having them disappear. Story 99. Itching. I will take pain over itching any day. I am having an eczema flare-up at the moment, and it is just hateful. Story 100. Having one ear unable to pop due to a cold is frustrating. Being deaf in one ear is infuriating. Story 101. Being rejected by the person you believed was the one. Story 102. Brain freeze does not hurt in the traditional way, but it is very uncomfortable. Story 103. When you tip back just a little too far in a chair and you see your life flash before your eyes for a moment before you lean forward again, that oh no second lasts a lifetime. Story 104. Slightly taking a hit to one of your testicles or in your solar plexus. They do not hurt as such, but it is really unpleasant. Story 105. Mental pain is always worse than physical pain. I once saw a girl passed out in a huge puddle of urine and feces that came from a bunch of overused portable toilets uphill, in the evening towards the end of the festival. I am pretty sure it was the Roskilde Festival, which is quite a large event. A lot of waste must have flowed past or around that poor girl. I believe those are among the worst feelings. I am suddenly very happy not to have experienced being touched by someone else's defecation. Story 106. Finding out your significant other has been cheating, and then when confronting them, they just disappear. Not only do you feel like you are not good enough for them because they cheated, but you also feel like you are not even worthy of a conversation about it. Story 107. Depression is like the feeling of stepping out of bed in the middle of the night into a pile of dog or cat waste. Story 108. Chronic anxiety is the feeling that you are about to be ambushed by an unknown predator, recurring repeatedly over the hours. Story 109. Your wife or children legitimately crying out of real sadness. Story 110. The most painful thing that is not physically painful is the existential terror, the sudden, random moment in the day when you are struck with the overwhelming realization that you are alive, and that at some point you will inevitably face the one thing your entire being has been designed to avoid, death. In that fleeting moment of clarity, the weight of your mortality presses down on you, and you understand that no matter what you do, you cannot escape it. It will be the most terrifying experience of your life, and it will also be the last. Afterward, there will be no more love, no more joy, no more sadness, no more wonder, and no more contentment. Every emotion and every experience that once filled your life with meaning will simply cease, and worse, you will not even know they were ever there. What adds to this pain is the realization that eventually, you too will be forgotten, just like the countless souls who have walked this earth before you. The stories of your life, the love you gave and received, the moments of laughter and sorrow, they will fade away, just as you will. In time, your existence will be swallowed by the passage of time, erased from memory, as if you had never been. It is this inevitable fading, this erasure of the self, that weighs on the human soul, a pain that cuts deeper than any physical wound. It is the fear of no longer being, of disappearing not only from the world but also from the hearts and minds of those who knew you. It is the silent understanding that life, in all its beauty and fragility, is temporary, and so too is everything you ever were. That is the most painful thing that is not physically painful. Story 111. That slow drill at the dentist's office. I hate it. I get tense and my body locks up because of it, but it is not actually painful. Story 112. When you are wearing a sweater over a long-sleeved shirt and you roll the sleeves up, the sweater sleeves fall back down, but the long sleeves underneath stay bunched up. Story 113. Unpleasant emotional or mental states are experienced in the body as unpleasant sensations. Story 114. Suddenly remembering something very important you were supposed to do at work at about 10 at night. Story 115. Hopelessness is the true feeling that leads to suicide. Story 116. Knowing that no matter how much you love someone, you cannot make them love you. Story 117. Being in love with someone who does not feel the same. Edit. These are some sad stories. I hope you all find some solace in someone who will love you as much as you love them. The only way out is through. Other edit. Gold? For my heartache? You are too kind, friend. Thank you. Story 118. Heartbreak can be physically painful even though it is manifested mentally. Story 119. I remember your smile with the sun in your eyes, and the smell of the summer, the sound of the breeze. I remember your shape under powder blue skies, under wandering clouds, under whispering trees. I remember the feel of the grass at our back, and the touch of its warmth, and the cool of the shade, and the calls of our friends from the riverway track, and the season that lasted for an age when it stayed. I remember the fire we built at night, and the sight of the stars as they slipped in a stream, and the furtive first kiss that we shared by its light, and the simple, impossible, innocent dream. I remember you most in the starlight above, but for you it was fun and for me it was love. Story 120. Falling out of love is the most terrible feeling I have ever been unfortunate enough to know. Building a life with someone, dating forever, and being that couple everyone looks up to, loving so hard it hurts. You can close your eyes and paint the perfect picture of them smiling. Maybe that time you went swimming naked and kissed in the moonlight, sleeping with patterns from the blinds streaming, just so across her face. You know all her moles, all her scars, and the stories behind them. You imagine what your kids will look like and think about what their names will be. You have this idea of growing old together, of getting married, and kissing their beautiful face on the altar. You are just so ready to live, to go on this adventure with someone who has been your whole life. You plan together, and then your interests and ideas slowly change, so subtle at first. You talk less. The honeymoon is over, and you realize you are still just a kid at heart, trying to grow up and become yourself. They are becoming themselves. But these paths do not match the ones you planned. All these plans, the imagined children, the make-believe wedding, even the thought of being old and holding her hand on the bus. Everything, even the silly, insignificant possibilities are just gone. They cannot exist anymore. They will never happen. It is over. And everything else is just memories or things that will never happen. You cannot touch it or live it anymore. You know it could not work, but it still haunts you every day that those possibilities are no more. Story 121. But you realize you have them both, and that sinking feeling is actually your boat capsizing. Story 122. While submitting an exam, knowing it was terrible, you now need to wait to find out how bad it was. Story 123. Erasing with a number 2 pencil when suddenly the metal scrapes the paper sends an awful shiver down my spine. Story 124. When I broke my arm, I also dislocated my wrist. I had surgery, and on top of the plate they put on my radius, they also inserted a long metal pin between my radius and ulna to keep my wrist in place. The radius and ulna are the 2 bones in your forearm. Once it healed, I had to go in to get the pin removed. The doctor held my arm with one hand and pulled the pin out with the other. I would describe the sensation as nails on a chalkboard, but inside my arm. It was like my bone was the chalkboard and the pin was the nail scraping along it. It did not hurt, but by God, it is a sensation I never want to feel again. Story 125. Hiccups lasting more than an hour. Please help me. Story 126. Then, once you are dressed, your bowels suddenly alert you to their displeasure with your most recent meal choice. Prepare for the after-shower bowel movement in a warm sauna. Story 127. The clicks and pops I feel in my arthritic hip are uncomfortable. I do not have arthritis elsewhere. The hip was badly damaged in a car accident 2 years ago, resulting in reconstructive surgery and considerable loss of cartilage. Although the hip does ache, these clicks and pops do not hurt, but they feel weird, unnatural, and horrible. They are frequently audible as well. Story 128. I have had persistent intrusive thoughts about death and a deep fear of losing my loved ones since I was a child. I described the feeling as similar to those last few hours before taking a visiting relative to the airport, where the goodbye is imminent. Both of you try to stay cheerful before heading to the airport, knowing they will be gone soon. I have been feeling this dread for over 25 years, and it is very painful. Story 129. Having your arm pinned under you while sleeping, then waking up to what feels like a dead lump of flesh attached to you. Story 130. I broke up with my girlfriend because of terrible commitment issues. We got back together, but hearing her voice as I ended our relationship was the most painful thing I have ever experienced. Story 131. Anxiety and the feeling right before vomiting. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.